Hi, my name is Obafemi Akinjobi. My English 4 teacher is Miss Woodhall, and my senior project is on racial discrimination. My attention getter is this stuff happens to me. Not usually, but I remember vaguely when this happened to me. And it was in 7th grade, and I was at town center. It was nighttime. Me and my sister was waiting on my mom to come pick us up. And what happened was a police officer came up to me and asked in a hostile tone, "Were you banging on windows?" And I said in a calm, concerned tone, "No, sir, I haven't." Then me and that officer came walking towards where my sister was when she was talking to a different officer, and that officer was questioning her, asking her if she was banging on windows, and she kept saying she wasn't, and then he started to get hostile with my sister. Then when my mom came, he changed his whole entire tone, and then he kept saying, and I quote, "It's the benefit of the doubt." And then another one was when I was walking to Nordstrom, because I live close to Nordstrom. Some random white dude in a SUV, a white SUV, popped his head out the window and called me the hard R, which is the N word if no one didn't notice or didn't understand. So this stuff happens to me a good amount of times. This is my table of contents, as you can see. It goes down to 23. So the overview of this whole entire topic is that how the people of the United States should stop racial discrimination towards African Americans. My interest of this topic is that me as an African American living in America, not that much people talks about this topic, and yeah, those are two that mainly made me want to do this topic. My thesis is that the people of the United States should stop the spread of racial discrimination. And these are my 3 subpoints to give the reason why. African Americans are valuable citizens of the U.S. and should deserve to be treated as such. Unity is what's best for America, and people still in 2021 hold prejudice against African Americans. A little history session. In the 40s through 60s, African Americans had to deal with the racial discrimination in the United States, mainly in the South, in the deep South. You don't see it in the North because racism, well, not racism to be exact, but slavery has been abolished in the South, and so on and so forth. Not just slavery, racism in total. They had to deal with segregation, the Ku Klux Klan being lynched, and getting brutally beaten to death by the police officers that were meant to protect and serve. Martin Luther King Jr. In 1954, Martin Luther King became a pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. He has always been a strong worker for the civil rights for members of his race. King was, by this time, a member of the executive committee of the NAACP and the leading organization of its kind in the nation. He was already then in early 1955, in December of 1955, to accept the leadership of the first great Negro non-involvement demonstration of contemporary times in the United States. Then the bus boycott described by Gunner John in his presentation speech in honor of the laureate. The boycott lasted for 382 days on December 21st, 1956, after the Supreme Court of the United States had declared unconstitutional the laws requiring segregation on buses. To continue this, the Black Panther Party was founded in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. They were young African Americans that were political activists that were disappointed in the failure of the civil rights movement improved with African Americans in the South, and how protesters would get brutally beaten. So they made the Black Panther Party to protect the protesters and African Americans in the South. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old kid that went to visit his family in Monee, Mississippi on August 28th, 1955. Then was brutally beaten, allegedly to death, for allegedly flirting with a white lady 4 days later. Current problems and issues: police brutality, that's still going on, that hasn't stopped. African Americans being unemployed, and no one really talks about this situation. The opposing side's opinion: they would say African Americans are no different from everybody else. They would also say racial discrimination is not happening anymore. They would also say, or not say, but they would do this, they would skip this topic until something happens, and then they would hop in the topic. My first rebuttal is that Black Americans were 3.5 times more likely than white people to be killed by police violence over the last 40 years. Mr. Aubrey, African American male, was fatally shot by 3 white men while jogging near his home, while Miss Taylor, Breonna Taylor, also 25, was shot in her bed when a police raided the wrong house. More than 11,000 demonstrations associated with the Black Lives Matter movement have been reported in nearly 3,000 distinct locations all around this country. And with the third subpoint, basically is saying that, or I'm saying that, unless something happens that has to do with African American, people jump in so they wouldn't seem like they're racist. People would jump in and seem like they're not, they seek to be part of the crowd. Like with like a clothing trend. People would try to be part of that thing so they can be a cool person, or in this case, a person that really cares about other people when they really don't. In this case, African Americans. My first subpoint is about Darius Rucker. If you don't know who he is, he's an African American country singer. He was part of a band since 1994. They broke up, or they split apart, called Hootie and the Blowfish. I hope I said that right. Hootie and the Blowfish. And they broke into mainstream on the Atlantic label with their album Cracked Rear View. The record skyrocketed to the number 1 and featured smash hits such as Hold My Hand, Time, Let Her Cry, and I Only Want to Be With You. The album's first single, Don't Think About It, jumped to top 20 on the Billboard charts in July 2008, thus making Darius Rucker the first African American singer to reach the top of the country charts since Charlie Pride in 1988. Rucker's newfound fame in the country realm also earned him an invitation to the Grand Ole Opry later that year, which was 2016 at the time, and his performance earned a standing ovation. Longtime country that is a tongue twister, ladies and gentlemen. Publicist Ebby McFarlane, hopefully I said that right, who has represented Rucker since his arrival in Nashville, confirms that Rucker's pop star status was an asset and a limited one. Whenever he would go, and she says, and I quote, whenever he would go to a country music station, he would get in the door because of the Hootie reputation, she says. And she also implied, but his knowledge of country music and his history is what won people over, and you cannot fake that. That is what she said. His approach is to drive change by persisting as an artist and as the exception for now. And African Americans singing country music at this point in 2016, I think, and this is what he said, I think the vast majority of people accept it, he says. But this industry is expected to be elite white, and I'm trying to do something to change that. So point 2, unity is what is best for America. When you personally see a police officer, what does it usually make you feel more or less secure? And this is a chart from Vox. And this chart implies that the purple represents less secure, the light gray represents no effect, and the dark gray represents more secure. And the total tile, the purple is 28%, the light gray is 46%, and the dark gray is 26%, while as for whites, it's 22%, 46%, and 32%. And as for African Americans, it is 60%, 35%, and 5%. And for Latinx, it is 31%, 49%, and 19%. And for others, it's 25%, 48%, and 27%. And to back that up, a much-cited study researchers at Rutgers University of Michigan and Washington University in St. Louis, explained by Vox Dylan Scott, found that black men have a 1 in 1,000th chance of being killed by the police, with a 1.5 percentage point margin of error. 56% of black Americans say that they had a great deal or fair amount of confidence in the police, compared to 78% of white Americans who said the same. And confidence was even lower among young black Americans. 49% said they had a great or fair amount of confidence in the police. All right, hang on. This is my third subpoint. African Americans jobless rate. The drop in black unemployment in June was driven by the decline for women. And on the bottom right here, you probably can't see that, but the bottom right there, the blue represents unemployment for African Americans in total, while as for the light blue, it represents the unemployment rate of African American men, and then the orange represents the unemployment rate of African American women. And right here it says, and I quote, The jobless rate for black men hit the highest since November 2011. And that is 18% that it hits for in total. But for African American men, it hits also at like 17%, and for women it hits at 16%. And to back this subpoint up, unemployment rate, black or African American, was 6.70% in November of 2021, according to United States Federal Reserve. Reached a record of a high 21.20% in January of 1983, and a record low of 5.20 in August of 2019. Nearly 250,000 African Americans left the workforce, and the total number employed fell by 12,000. Oh, sorry. My interview was Leonard Middleton, and I asked him a couple questions during that interview. And one of those questions was, what is your take on racial discrimination? And he said, and I quote, race should not actually be a factor. And he also implied that for some reason that we are still acting primitive. And then I asked him another question. How old were you when you found out about racial discrimination? He said that he was 7 years old when he found out about racial discrimination. And he also implied that how he found that out, he was with his mother at the time, and his mother was a nanny for a white family, and he would call them aunts and uncles. And he was walking with them one day, and other people around him was giving them weird stares. And then he heard one of them calling him the N-word. My challenge is to find solutions to make the world a better place, and to see improvements in the work industry, to have people talk about this topic more. In conclusion, the citizens of the United States needs to realize that racial discrimination against African Americans is still going on. It hasn't stopped. And need to find solutions to make the American people, or America, to make America the world a better place. My reflection is that there's a lot of stuff I did not realize about racial discrimination, and I want to learn more about it. How people with race have to deal with racial discrimination 24/7, 365. And also how we rarely talk about this topic. This is my picture links. This is my works cited. Any questions? Thank you.